All right, we're going to continue a previous lesson where we talked about the horizontal and vertical plane of existence. Here, we are talking about the horizontal plane is where we live, and the vertical plane is where God lives. And we are talking about at some point in our life we reach a crisis. And when we reach that crisis in our life, on some kind of scale from birth to death, uh, let's look at birth. We'll put birth over here. Birth to death. Along the way, this crisis occurs. And we can put the crisis in here. And we can say that we either ascend into the unknown, where we try to find an answer as to why this is happening to us, or we descend into the known, which is mostly driven by ego to a certain extent, or by society. Now, society can tell us what they think is the problem when we hit this crisis in our life, but they really don't know. It's a crossroad. It's a real crossroad, and it's at that point that ascension is possible, or the opportunity for us to get to know God through our prayers and through our meditations. Now, I certainly don't suggest that we wait until there is a crisis in order for us to try to change or find relief or to be transformed, but it certainly can precipitate a kind of change or transformation that can occur in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be the only thing that precipitates that. As a general rule, there's always some kind of conflict in our life, and that conflict can be driven by crisis or it can be driven by everyday life. But the challenge is, at this point in life, we can surrender, and if we are able to surrender ourselves, it may help us. It may help us to a certain extent. It may help us get past what I call our ego. And the ego, ego, can be formidable in preventing us from experiencing the kind of change that we want in our life. Now, here's the earth. Here's heaven up on a vertical axis. Of course, you still have a time continuum that's continuing to flow in chronological time. But once you ascend, you reach Kairos time. So there's no definite period of time or how long it takes for you to change. But the change certainly can occur and will occur if we find ourselves surrendering to God, and that's a critical component. So you got prayer. Prayer is one. Two, meditation, and then the third thing is surrendering. Those three things helps us on the horizontal plane, and we can't live because we live in a body, but we live once we ascend in spirit and to who God is and who God can be in us. And that possibility at this crossroad in life allows us to meet the crisis head on, to change and to find relief from the conflicts that certainly will come if we are living on the horizontal plane and there's no other place for us to live if we exist in the earth. But the whole idea is that there's another side of ourselves, there's another side of life. There is indeed a heaven that speaks of a peace of mind. Certainly, our faith speaks to that, and it's because of our faith that we can move from the horizontal plane to the vertical plane, come back as a changed human being, and at some point ascend again into the unknown at the point of our death. Let's look at something else related to this, and it's the 5 levels of mind. The 5 levels of mind that we're going to talk about. These 5 levels of mind certainly opens the door to some new opportunities for us to experience God in a very different way. Let's look at this side of the equation first. We've said that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 levels of the mind in earlier videos. And we said the pre-mind is our years from birth to 3 years of age, up to 4. Then there's the collective mind, there's the individual mind, there's the universal mind, and then there's the Christ consciousness mind. And we said the pre-mind is a mind of the child. This is the mind of the child. And at that level, there's pure faith, nothing but faith as a general rule. The child absolutely believes everything that's told to it, and it's very innocent. And you can understand as a child coming into this world without really a guide per se. I think there's a universal guide or a God guide because the child is so happy, so innocent, so accepting of life. And then the next level is the collective mind. The collective mind basically speaks is when society comes in, and it's almost a yes to everything at this level. Society says family comes in, the clan, and everything becomes important. Fitting in, I think, becomes critical to this level. Fitting in. Everybody wants to fit, wants to be accepted, wants to be part of an individual family, an individual clan, an individual system. And at this particular point, ideology, what you believe, what you care about, comes into play. Very, very important. Then you move to, if you're lucky now, 95% of the people get stuck right here at the society level or the collective mind level. Everyone goes through, 100% of everyone goes through, obviously, the childish phase, unless something's wrong with you, but you go through this phase. And then there's the individual mind that comes in. About 3% get to this level. The individual mind now takes over, and the individual mind is very ego-driven. A lot of questioning begins to be answered. There's a lot of doubt. The scientific method kind of comes into play. This is a level of self-centeredness and selfishness that's kind of unparalleled. Very creative, though. Very creative. A lot of your artists, painters, entertainers, people in acting and other fields, as well as your general workforce, individuals who are titans of industry who lead. These individuals have huge egos, the politicians and those individuals at that level. Everything at this level is kind of no, or why, or there's a lot of doubt here, and there's a lot of competition that occurs at the individual mind level. And again, very few people really get to that stage. Many in the West have gotten there because of the individualistic aspects of the culture and the competition that's bred in European, American, Western countries. And then the next level is the universal mind. Now, this is the level that we all would aspire to go. How do I fit into the universe is the question. How do I fit in? How do I fit in the universe is the ultimate question. And along with this question comes the idea of yes comes back again, and a belief, a trust, a true trust, and we want to put that up here. Trust in life, trust in TR. Let's get that spell right. T, because it's a very important concept. TRUST. Very important at this particular point. This is an opportunity for the bridge or the gap that exists between us and God to be closed. Again, now we're talking about a very small number, about 1% would get there. And the competition goes out of the window. The ego has to surrender to the fact that there is a true God. This is sort of the all-seeing, all-knowing I up here. And that's what we're all striving to. But this universal mind is a real challenge because the biggest challenge is letting L-E-T go of the ego, E-G-O. And that's hard. That's hard because through the collective mind, we built up aspects of the ego by accepting some of the mores and folkways and customs and traditions of the society. And then when we became an individual, those beliefs harden, and we start questioning many of them, and then we came up with our own conclusions, which made us very creative in our approach. Everything became our world. The ego became hardened. But without that ego, there is no possibility of extending into the universal. But if we stop with the ego and cannot get a definition that goes beyond that, we don't fall back to the collective. We actually fall back to the pre-mind, to a state of insanity, so to speak. I mean, it's the kind of thing uh, that individuals have been known to do who can never get their arms around the notion that there's a God that exists in the world. But the idea here is to be able to slowly but surely ascend up this pyramid. And of course, it's not a very easy thing to do. Clearly, this ascension into the unknown is part of the goal, part of the strategy, part of what we are trying to achieve and trying to close the gap between us and God, trying to bridge that gap. And one of the most important concepts that we need to be clear is that at the very top of this, number 5, is Christ consciousness. And what we're trying to do in our efforts each day through the power of meditation and prayer is to close this gap between the individual and universal mind, and clearly at some particular point move into Christ consciousness. Now, unless you become Jesus Christ or Buddha or Muhammad or one of the great believers who have been enlightened over a period of time, very few people, actually few of us, will reach the Christ consciousness stage. But we certainly can reach the universal stage and experience a great deal of peace, a great deal of joy, a great deal of bliss. It certainly gives us something to work for. Hopefully this is helpful, and it will be helpful as we do subsequent lessons.